if you had on your 2024 bingo card hidden Jewish tunnels under New York City, then you are winning at life because you just nailed it. This is really, I have to think, the most bizarre story I've heard in a very long time. But I think it could potentially, we don't know yet, it could really have potentially really troubling pieces of this story as they come out here. And we have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions about this story. First, some context. What you're seeing here, notice the people in the middle of your screen who are hiding there in underground caves in New York City, which have been busted wide open and are now being filled with cement as a result of discovering these really damaging and hidden caverns underneath the city of New York. Late yesterday afternoon, a wild riot broke out inside a New York City synagogue in Brooklyn. Police had to be called in. Why? Look at these secret, I mean, they're coming out of the ground. And a riot breaks out as a result of it. I mean, construction workers showed up. This is when the riot started. So construction workers showed up and started trying to pour cement into these hidden tunnel systems. And that these Orthodox Jewish members had built. It's illegal. And you're not allowed to live underneath. Look at that police officer. He pulled up a taser. He's like, you guys got to get back. They're trying to fight the fact that they're now going to uncover what's perhaps in these tunnels. Is it just people? Is it just they're using it to traverse the area?
I was wondering if it was because I don't know if you know this, but in a lot of those Jewish communities, they will tie a rope from one house to the other because they're not allowed to leave their house on the Sabbath. But they're thinking as if the rope is attached, it's not technically leaving their house because it's still part of it. So maybe they were trying to attach these tunnels so that it was still connected to their home so they could leave on the Sabbath.
Maybe that's, and if that's what they're saying. Also, the Daily Mail was saying, well, no, they built these tunnels so they could sneak into the synagogue during COVID lockdowns. But that doesn't make any sense because we now know that these tunnels were constructed about 6 months ago. So it has nothing to do with COVID. It has nothing to do with lockdowns, trying to sneak into a synagogue because you're that devout. That's how the Daily Mail was trying to portray the story. They're so devout that they just built tunnels. They had to get to the synagogue. They had to get there.
It's pretty terrifying when how many stories did we see last year of buildings collapsing,
right?
Apartment buildings collapsing. I don't think that's safe.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's safe either. But we do know. Well, I mean, there's so many things we don't know right now. Why were they building these tunnels? The dispute. So, okay, the New York City Police Department was called in because these construction workers showed up. Who called the construction workers? That's what I'd like to know. Number one, who called the construction workers to show up in the first place? And were they filling in cement on the streets? Because on the streets, you could actually see some of the caves. You could actually see some of the tunnels from the streets. So is the city trying to do some routine maintenance when they uncovered this? What the hell is going on here? So then as you
seen those
yeah, well, we got the videos here.
Videos of people walking on the sidewalks of New York, and you can see holes and see down into what appears to be tunnels.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And then, of course, you see the individuals coming out of the holes in the ground out on the streets under hidden entranceways that were being hidden by newspaper holders, where you get the free daily circular or whatever. So they're sliding them out of the way over a grate that has a hole cut in it, and they're climbing down into the holes. There you go. Look at that. It's an example of one of them. It's hidden behind this newspaper bin that's there. It's insane. It's really bizarre. And then, so members of the Chabad Lubavitch have been digging tunnels under the synagogue at 770 Eastern Parkway in the Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn, and they've been doing this for many, many months. Now, the website forward.com is coming forward and reporting that it was designed to reach an abandoned woman's mikvah or ritual baths. Now, this is according to forward.com. The website said the tunnel had been dug to expand the synagogue, although it was unclear how they would actually do that by expanding the synagogue under the ground. The tunnels were discovered back in December, and then the synagogue's leaders called in a structural engineer then to assess the damage of it. And then the cement mixers arrived to try to fill in these tunnels, and then that's when a lot of these young Orthodox Jewish men reacted, started ripping away the wooden walls. And then when they started ripping away the wooden walls, you started to discover some really troubling things behind the walls. We take a look at some of the, well, as you're seeing the footage here, but what's behind the walls is really bizarre. Like this high chair, like children's high chairs in back in these rooms, these soiled children's mattresses.
Oh.
A lot of people, so again, we have a lot of questions. We don't know, why are there children's mattresses hidden in these tunnels? Soiled children's mattresses. Why are there children's high chairs in these tunnels? We don't know. We sure would like answers, though, and I hope there's an investigation. Vice News, though, many years ago did an investigation, and this goes back. So when we talk about this, these child rape assembly lines, as the Vice News article had covered this back in 20, let's see the byline on that, 2013, the child rape assembly line. And a rabbi at the time walked in on one of these bathhouses and saw the absolute unbelievable, disgusting, horrible stuff that was happening to these children in these bathhouses, and blew the lid on it. And of course, then there was a number of arrests in Brooklyn and a number of arrests throughout New Jersey. So I don't know if you guys remember the corruption and the arrests that happened in New Jersey, but it also swept into Brooklyn. So here's a news report from 2009, just to light a fire in your brain. And I don't know that these tunnels now today are in any way related to that. But when you find children's mattresses and you find high chairs, one has to wonder. Here's the news report from 2009. Take a look.
These were arrests on a massive scale. Amongst those taken into custody by the FBI were city mayors, politicians and religious leaders. The authorities needed buses to cope with the sheer scale of the operation.
New Jersey's corruption problem is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the nation. Corruption is not only pervasive, it has become ingrained in New Jersey's political culture.
It's thought that religious charities controlled by prominent rabbis were used to launder cash. The arrests were part of a 10-year operation that uncovered money laundering on an international scale, as well as corruption and the sale of human organs in the US, Switzerland and Israel.
The sale of human organs. The sale of human organs, people. That was a France 24 piece, and I remember it clearly because it was all over New Jersey news when that happened. The sale of human organs.
You know what one difference about that?
The FBI arrested them for that. Like, this isn't like fantasy. They were arrested as a result of that. And she tags that. I mean, she's talking about money laundering, the other thing, and the sale of children's human organs. Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, one difference of that time right there, we had real journalists back then. We had real journalists exposing that kind of stuff. Could you imagine that probably wouldn't happen today if that was going on?
No, and even actually,
it probably is.
Actually, CNN separately did a report on what was happening specifically on the Brooklyn piece of this. Again, this is where the tunnels were discovered. This is where the tunnels were discovered.